parece, procedemos a probar interpretación y captions. Probando canales. Probando canales. Espero confirmación. Probando canal español. Intérpretes, por favor, si pueden confirmarnos.
bottom here.
And then and just press this to speak. You're done. So you just scroll up and down like this to read. Okay. And you can share it.
Recording in progress.
Muy buenos días a todos y todas. Doy por inaugurada la audiencia número 4 de nuestro periodo 186 de sesiones, la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, que lleva por título Derechos Humanos de los pueblos indígenas taínos y cimarrones en Jamaica, que fuera solicitada por las organizaciones Maroon Indigenous Women Circle y Jamaica Council of Indigenous Leaders. Excuse me for my English. Mi nombre es Esmeralda Arosemena de Troitiño, primera vicepresidenta de la Comisión Interamericana y relatora para los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Me acompañan hoy la comisionada segunda vicepresidenta Roberta Clark, relatora para Jamaica, el comisionado Joel Hernández y el comisionado Carlos Bernal. Muchas gracias. También en este acto se está presente la Secretaría Ejecutiva Adjunta, la Secretaría María Claudia Pulido, no la veía, el relator para la libertad de expresión, Pedro Vaca, la relatora especial para los derechos económicos, sociales, culturales y ambientales, Soledad García Muñoz, y la coordinadora, no sé si está presente, de medidas cautelares, y nuestra Secretaría Ejecutiva, Tania Renau. Quiero iniciar con un saludo solidario y mi reconocimiento a los peticionarios y a las organizaciones que han solicitado esta audiencia por estar aquí presentes en el día de hoy, compartiendo una importante temática para nuestro conocimiento e información. El ilustre Estado de Jamaica, que no se encuentra presente físicamente, tengo entendido que hará una conexión vía internet, vía virtual. Y como tenemos esta situación de la no presencia física del Estado, le vamos a dar a la sociedad civil el tiempo, un poco más de lo que teníamos programado, atendiendo pues la no presencia del Estado. 18 minutos, quizás unos 10 minutos más. Luego la comisión hará una intervención para tener la oportunidad del cruce de información con los peticionarios. Luego volvemos a darles la palabra para sus comentarios finales a la sociedad civil y a la comisión. De inmediato vamos entonces a iniciar esta audiencia que, como ya indicara, está relacionada con la temática de los derechos humanos de los pueblos indígenas taíno y cimarrón de Jamaica. A la sociedad civil, nuestro reconocimiento y le damos la palabra. Si quieren, se pueden identificar para que queden los debidos registros de su intervención.
Usakasi, Nibonrish Kaimandiri, Kasike Yokayaki Yame Wanidaka. Greetings, I am Chief Kalan Nibonrish Kaiman of the Jamaican Hummingbird Taino people.
Greetings, I'm Gama Gloria, Mama G. Sims, Paramount Queen of the Maroons of Jamaica.
Buiti Binafi. Good morning, good day. I am Cynthia Ellis Lubafu Isieni, Ambassador at Large for the Garifuna Nation, supporting our relatives from Jamaica and around the world.
Biti Binafi. My name is Michael Sabal. I'm the acting president of the Garifuna Nation, and we are here in support of the Maroons in Jamaica.
Kualitonali no chantlake no chansiwat, nebo masatsin, y bueno yo lo paki igual nimisita. Buenos días, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Masatsin Casas Acosta y soy primer coordinador del Consejo Internacional de Primeras Naciones. Estamos aquí en apoyo de los pueblos de Jamaica, Plaza Camati.
And good morning. I'm Eleni Alain of Freedom Imaginaries.
Tehuvet tamet, tovangar, onukvetam, ahihirom, ehu inkem, kalani bonrish kaimandiri, kasike yame wanidaka. Good day to the land of the Tongva people, ancestors, elders, relatives. I am Kalani Bonrish Kaiman, Robert Pierman, Cacique of Yamewani Taino people. And we start by acknowledging the Gabrielino Tongva, the traditional caretakers of this land, the Fernandino Tataviam, the Chumash and the Ajachamen, and all our relatives to the east, south, west, and north of where we are gathered. We thank this land for accepting our people and call on their support for activities today. Kokoli. And now Gama Mamaji with libations.
Greetings. We give thanks for this day. Give thanks for this gathering, this circle. Give thanks for life. Give thanks for journey mercy that enabled us to be here. This morning we ask, as we come into this room, that justice will be done. We ask that all injustice will be nullified unto our people, and that this gathering will bring cooperation, collaboration, and further healing. Ashe, give thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Melanie Elaine of Freedom Imaginaries, and I'm honored to present the delegation of Indigenous leaders who will address you on the human rights of Indigenous, Taino, and Maroon peoples in Jamaica. In person, I'm delighted to be here with Cacique Kalan, Taino chief of the Jamaican Hummingbird tribe, and Gloria Mamaji Sims, Paramount Queen of the Maroons, as well as our supporters from the Garifuna Nation. And from Jamaica, Commissioners, we have pre-recorded greetings from the colonels of Jamaica's Maroon communities, and so I invite you to listen to their greetings on video.
Mabrika, Kaikotakina Diri, Asike Eani Yamewani. What I've just said in my own Taina language is, greetings. My name is Kaikotakina. Kaikotakina means island food teacher. I am the chieftainess of Yamewani. That is Jamaica Hummingbird Taino people.
My name is Marcia Douglas, currently the Chief or Colonel of the Charleston Maroon community.
Good day, everyone. My name is Wally Sterling, and I'm the Chief of the Moortown Maroons. And this Moortown encompasses more than just one community. It's most of the community in the upper part of the Rio Grande Valley, in the parish of Portland in Jamaica.
Yes, I am Lloyd Latimer, the Chief of the Scotsall Maroon. Scotsall is located southeastern St. Mary, and a population of about, I would say, 3,000 people, because the community has narrowed down. But the space, the wider space that Scotsall takes up, it's about 6,000 to 7,000 people.
And Commissioners, I now turn to Cacique Kalan, who will briefly discuss the history of the Indigenous Taino and Maroon peoples. And after that introduction, we will highlight priority issues affecting the rights of Indigenous Taino and Maroon people in Jamaica, including from an intersectional perspective that highlights the experiences of Indigenous women.
Jamaica was originally inhabited by the Tainos, historically but inaccurately also called Arawaks. In 1494, Jamaica was claimed by Spain, who in short order put the peaceful Tainos to do free labor for the emerging gold industry. Though the Spanish invaders caused the death of the majority of the Tainos in Jamaica in the early 1500s, we did not all perish. The first Maroons in Jamaica were therefore the Tainos, who escaped the arriving Spanish and their encomienda system into the mountainous interior of Jamaica. Colonial narratives falsely assert indigenous extinction by as early as 1520. However, archaeological evidence suggests small Taino populations existed during this period. Census records also report Indian populations alongside enslaved Africans in Sevilla la Nueva in Jamaica in 1533. During the colonial onslaught, the indigenous people existed in the mountains, On the coast, remote fishing villages, and in plain sight, indigenous people of Jamaica have never been extinct. In 1655, England wrested away Jamaica from Spain, adding it to its Caribbean colonies, and in the process waged war for over 85 years against the Maroons. So as to sustain its colonial sugar-based industries, England sought to replenish the severely diminished labor force by importing Africans into Jamaica to work the plantations and keep the wheels of colonial enterprise turning. Continuous resistance and escape by the increasing number of enslaved Africans led to the expansion of Maroon settlements in the mountainous interior, many of the early Africans having run away to the interior to join Amerindian communities or Yame Taino communities. Jamaica's Maroons of today are therefore descendants of Jamaica's first peoples, as well as descendants of self-liberated enslaved people, indigenous to Africa, who have retained African identities through spirituality, ties to the land, social and political organization, medicinal healing practices, dress, music, dance, and language. Gama Mama G.
In Jamaica, 2 treaties were signed historically between the British colonial government and the Maroons. One in 1738 with the Leeward Maroons in the western interior of Jamaica in and around the Cockpit country, and the other in 1739 with the Windward Maroons in the eastern interior of Jamaica and in and around the Blue and John Crow Mountains. The Maroons Treaty recognized Maroon liberty, freedom, self-governance, and ownership of land. Today, Yankunkung Pikiboo Maroons continue to claim our rights to self-determination and to govern and occupy our treaty lands. The Yankunkung Pikiboo Maroon also maintain a unique system of communal held treaty lands as part of our ancestral heritage and collective identity. Although related, the Taino and Maroon communities of Jamaica are distinct communities. Applying the International Labour Organization ILO Convention number 169 on indigenous and tribal peoples in independent countries, the Taino clearly qualify as indigenous. The Maroon can also be considered as indigenous to Jamaica on account of being descendant from the original Taino and our retention of our own social, economic, cultural, and political institution. Maroons in Jamaica, however, can also be considered as tribal peoples, based on the fact that our status is regulated partially by our own customs and tradition and by special laws or regulations.
However, despite the Tainos being featured on the coat of arms of Jamaica and the Maroon national heroine featured on the national $500 note, the Tainos and Maroons of Jamaica have suffered from the racist laws, policies, and legacies of colonial and post-colonial governments of Jamaica and its land, social, cultural, and religious biases and discriminatory practices. The government of Jamaica, from colonial times to the present, has blindly accepted and wrongfully perpetuated the myth of indigenous extinction in Jamaica. It has never acknowledged that Tainos continue to exist or that Maroons are entitled to the rights of indigenous and tribal peoples. In its recent review of Jamaica, the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination expressed concern about the government of Jamaica's refusal to recognize Maroons and Tainos as indigenous peoples. Please note that the government of Jamaica had referred to us as indigenous culture. Jamaica's constitution and laws do not recognize, guarantee, or protect the rights of indigenous peoples under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, such as our right to self-identify as indigenous and our rights to self-determination, autonomy, ownership, and control of our ancestral lands and resources. There's no mention of Taino in early childhood education system in Jamaica. This is a part of what can be called paper genocide, perpetuating the myth of Taino extinction. In this structural context, the indigenous people in Jamaica are exposed to serious threats to our way of life, as we will now discuss.
So as Kasika Kalan said, a major structural issue is that Jamaica's domestic legal framework does not recognize the communal land rights of the Maroons. And there is an urgent need to demarcate legally recognize and protect the boundaries of Maroon lands. And we have a video from Colonel Sterling and Lati Bodair from Jamaica to talk about this structural issue and how it manifests in their communities.
One of the major problems that we have facing our community at this point in time is the matter of land tenure. Our foreparents had an agreement with the colonial government that they signed in 1739 on the 23rd of June, and it gave up our forefathers a total autonomy over the communities that they preside. And there was nothing in that agreement that says that our forefathers should have paid taxes for any portion of the land that they occupied under that treaty. Successive governments over the years have tried to abrogate that aspect and tried to collect taxes from the people for land that they are not supposed to be paying taxes.
I think that most of what's on the treaty will cover most of the problems that we're having. Again, the land is one of the biggest issues because we don't know where the boundaries were. We're supposed to identify the boundaries. It never happened, but we'd like to revisit that offer. We acknowledge that a lot of this land might be personally owned, but I don't think all of it is at this point. And we would like to reestablish the boundaries that was given to us, and then we'll visit to see who owns what and how they acquired it.
So as a result, there is no legal clarity regarding Maroon land rights. Maroons have no recognized collective title to their traditional lands, which is still considered crown or state lands, while the government continues to issue land titles over Maroon lands to individuals without any respect for or reference to the Maroon leadership. These are very serious issues negatively affecting the survival of all Maroon communities in Jamaica. One of the most urgent manifestations of this structural issue is the granting of mining concessions over the ancestral lands of the Maroons in the cockpit country without their free, prior, and informed consent. Mining in the cockpit country presents serious threats of irreparable harm to the Maroons and their way of life. Mining will cause irreversible social and environmental damage while threatening one of the most valuable areas for biodiversity conservation. I'll now hand over to Mama G, who will provide an intersectional perspective focusing on Indigenous women's rights.
Indigenous women play a crucial role in preserving our culture. Since they are the bearers and keepers of indigenous knowledge, the structural issue that we have been discussing about the lack of recognition as a disproportionate native impact on indigenous women and our ability to pass down our indigenous knowledge from one generation to the next. We will start with a brief statement from Chieftainess Ronalda Pearman on priorities, issues affecting indigenous women in Jamaica.
What are some of the major issues that is affecting Indigenous women today? Our right to our own bodies, our right to our own birthing experiences, and the right to teach our children the way how we traditionally do.
For the Taino and Maroon communities, birth and death are ceremonies. However, too often, Taino and Maroons are denied our home birth ceremonies. Home birth and natural births are outright discouraged by health and government officials. Indigenous women are often told that they must have cesarean sections. After birth at public and private hospital, many mothers are forced to give unnatural milk formula to our newborns and even deny the right to leave the hospital until they have fed the child the formula. Another major issue is the policing of the Maroon communities. In recent years, the Maroon communities of Jamaica have experienced increased policing by and conflict with the police, which the state have not sought to resolve. For example, in December 2014, 2 captains of the Charlestown Maroon Council were arrested and charged in Charlestown Maroon community by the police for possession and smoking of a small amount, minute amount of ganja. In November 2018, the colonel of the Charlestown Maroon and 2 captains of the Charlestown Maroon Council were arrested and charged in Charlestown Maroon community by the police for indecent language and malicious destruction of property, stemming from an incident in which the police attempted to shut down a Maroon event in a hostile manner, disrespecting the Maroon communities and the Maroon traditional leadership in the process.
I'll touch on the deterioration that we've experienced with our connections with the state. Collectively, all of the above has contributed to the continuation of the denial by the majority of the public of the existence of Tainos in Jamaica. And to many persons of Taino and Maroon descent feeling unwilling to self-identify as Taino and or Maroon due to fear of ridicule in the school system, the workplace, and the wider Jamaican society. This has contributed to a denial of recognition of cultural and intellectual property of Tainos and Maroons. Our community members fear to openly practice our traditions as it may be seen as obia and fall under the Obia Act of 1898. And they fear if they share with others about our ancestral inherited spaces, the government will seek to claim it because of what may be buried there. The Taino and Maroon vision of autonomy, consistent with the rights of indigenous people, as articulated in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, is the ability of our communities to have our history, ancestry, rights, and leaders respected, our voices considered in matters affecting us, management of our communities and ancestral sites, and freedom to preserve and share our medicines, spiritual and cultural practices freely. In light of the above, we respectfully request the IACHR to call upon the government of Jamaica to recognize the rights of its indigenous peoples, the Yenkunkumpikibo Maroons and the Yame Taino, and to take the following actions. 1, recognition the indigenous rights of Taino and Maroon peoples in Jamaica in accordance with the AD-RIP and UND-RIP. 2, engage in meaningful and constructive dialogue with the Yenkunkumpikibo Maroons and Yame Taino with the purpose of initiating a process of truth-telling, reconciliation, resolution of our land and self-determination claims, and collaboration on issues of mutual concern. Adopt constitutional and legislative provisions to A, guarantee the rights of the Yenkunkumpikibo Maroons and Yame Taino to our lands, territories, and resources, and to protect us from illegal encroachment. And B, ensure that our communities can fully contribute to the development of the country and that our free, prior, and informed consent is required before any development or extractive projects affecting our traditional lands and resources are initiated. 5, establish a framework of engagement between the government of Jamaica, its ministries, departments, agencies, and law enforcement on the one hand, and indigenous peoples on the other, in accordance with Jamaica's international obligations. Refrain from the use of force. This is 6. Refrain from the use of force, harassment, and intimidation by law enforcement officials against Maroons and Taino people who defend our land. 7. Withdraw the Cabinet Office Directive and any public statements urging government ministries, departments, and agencies not to work with the Maroons or any group claiming to be indigenous, nor to sponsor any programs or projects that will include Maroons.
And apologize to Maroons community and these issues.
Muy bien. el tiempo ha concluido. A lo mejor entonces en la segunda vuelta pueden terminar. Vamos a darle ahora la palabra a través de los medios tecnológicos a la ilustre representación del Estado de Jamaica, quien nos va a presentar sus posiciones desde el medio.
Hello, good afternoon. Are you hearing me? Thank you. First Vice President, Commissioner Esmeralda de Tluitinia, Rapporteur for Jamaica, Commissioner Roberta Clark, other commissioners, petitioners, good afternoon. The government of Jamaica acknowledges the decision of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to convene a hearing today to hear the submission of the Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle and the Yamaya Council of Indigenous Leaders, despite our request for a postponement. The submission has been perused, and the government of Jamaica respectfully requests that the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights permit us to respond appropriately in writing at a later date, given that the request for a delay of the hearing of this matter was not accommodated on this occasion. Madam Commissioner, the Constitution of Jamaica protects the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Jamaicans and all persons in Jamaica under Chapter 3, which is commonly referred to as the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. Notably, we believe it is important to highlight the following fundamental rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Charter. 1. Freedom of thought, consciousness, belief, and observance of political doctrine. 2. The right to equality before the law. 3. The right to freedom of discrimination on the ground of being male or female, race, place of origin, social class, color, religion, or political opinions. And 4, the right to enjoy a healthy and productive environment, free from the threat of injury or damage from environmental abuse and the degradation of the ecological heritage. In this regard, the members of the Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle and the Yamaya Council of Indigenous Leaders are able to exercise all of their constitutionally protected rights and freedoms, as well as all other rights established by the laws of the country. And we assert, therefore, that no claim of discrimination can rightly be made against the state. Notably, one Maroon community has in fact exercised its right to equality before the law by instituting a claim before domestic courts, which raises several issues that will also rise in the hearing today. This therefore means that the government of Jamaica cannot address these issues at this time before the Commission. And we again reiterate the request to allow Jamaica to provide submissions in writing at a later date, when the state is able to address the issues in a fulsome manner before this Commission. In the meantime, the government of Jamaica remains open to engage in meaningful and constructive dialogue with the Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle and the Yamaya Council of Indigenous Leaders to discuss their issues and concerns. We trust that the Commission will consider favorably the request for Jamaica to submit a more detailed response in writing. I thank you.
Muchas gracias. No ¿Hay otra intervención por parte del Estado? Entonces vamos a dar continuación a la audiencia. Tomamos nota de lo que ha planteado la representación del ilustre Estado de Jamaica para dar unas respuestas más en detalle posteriormente. Nosotros, en la continuidad de esta audiencia, vamos ahora a darle a la comisión la oportunidad de su participación y poder tener un intercambio con ustedes. Voy a hacer uso de la palabra en mi condición de relatora para los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Quiero expresar mi sentimiento profundo de solidaridad con los planteamientos que se han hecho en un reclamo de sus derechos, y voy a partir de la última expresión de la representante del gobierno del Estado de Jamaica, una apertura al diálogo. Las audiencias, como herramienta que tiene la Comisión, tienen este objetivo fundamental: poder colocar a ambas partes en una posición de diálogo. Los peticionarios han puesto en sus solicitudes la necesidad de destacar precisamente esta fórmula de un diálogo constructivo, respetuoso, confiable, para un abordaje de lo que desde sus vivencias, desde sus comunidades, ustedes han planteado hoy a la Comisión. Yo quiero poder en esta oportunidad escucharles cuál es su opinión, cuál es su análisis respecto de el impacto que esto tiene de no reconocerles como a los pueblos taínos y cimarrones como pueblos indígenas. Ustedes han hecho un detalle de la historia de la formación de los pueblos. Entonces, ¿cuál es, según las vivencias que ustedes han tenido precisamente en la búsqueda de la satisfacción de sus derechos, los límites, los obstáculos ante ese no reconocimiento de condición o calificación, reconocimiento como pueblos indígenas? Ese como un punto. Y una segunda pregunta estaría en el concepto de la responsabilidad del Estado ante el cumplimiento de los acuerdos, de las declaraciones, de las normas, para darle precisamente a los pueblos indígenas su derecho a la autonomía, a la autodeterminación, en el tema en todos sus temas que forman parte de sus culturas ancestrales, todo el tema de educación, de salud, de protección del ambiente y de los territorios. En la evaluación que ustedes hacen del cumplimiento por parte del Estado en este reconocimiento de una identidad cultural, de una identidad en su autonomía de formas de gobierno para demandar los derechos. Eso sería para tener esta oportunidad. Después que mis colegas hagan uso de la palabra, ustedes tendrán un tiempo para las respuestas. Le voy a pasar de inmediato la palabra a la segunda vicepresidenta, la comisionada Roberta Clark, en su condición de relatora para el Estado de Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Arosemena, and are we in the afternoon? I'm still on Caribbean time, but I believe we are almost approaching the afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone here with us and also online, to the representatives of the state of Jamaica. I want to start off by saying how humble I am to be in this hearing and to listen to you very carefully. I think in a sense this is a historic hearing for the Commission, and I want to recognize that and also appreciate your own recognition of the first peoples of Jamaica that I know as freedom fighters and as the first Maroons. I like that formulation of it, and also therefore also to recognize the Maroons, what we consider the African Maroons as freedom fighters. The first freedom fighters, I think, really across the Caribbean, or one of the first freedom fighters across the Caribbean, fighting enslavement and demanding their freedom and their autonomy and their equality and their dignity. And that is the history that you seek to continue in your current struggles and your current articulation of your individual and collective rights. So I just want to start off by saying that. There are some questions that I have, and I do also want to reiterate Commissioner Arosemena's request of you to maybe speak a little bit more about what are the obstacles that you're facing to the recognition of your collective rights. You did mention some cultural obstacles and also some legal obstacles, and the cultural obstacles which may also be grounded in the legal barriers that you face. So, for example, the colonial criminalization of cultural practices such as, you said, obia. So I also want to ask you, what is the status of that legislation? Is it current, and is it being implemented? Now, even when legislation is not being implemented, its very existence creates the possibility and the climate for discrimination and stigmatization. But I would really like to hear a little bit more about what is the status of that law, and what are your thoughts on how that should be addressed. I also want to recognize your demand for recognition of other forms of cultural practice in relation to how women's autonomy over their bodies and how children are raised, and the education, the nature of education to which children are entitled, education that honors the background and the history and the culture. Two questions. In relation to the question of right to land, to which you spoke, I know that there may not be a precise kind of calculation or definition of what that territory looks like, but what I would like to hear from you, what you estimate that territory looks like, and what has been the status historically of your claim to that collective claim that you have to certain parts of the land of Jamaica. What has been the history of that demand and the response of the state to that demand? And my second question related to something that you said towards the end of your presentation, that you wanted to enter the cabinet directive not to work with Maroon peoples. So I would like to hear a little bit more about that. That seems rather extraordinary from what you've said, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that directive, as well as when was it formulated and how has it been implemented. And then in relation to the representatives of the state, and you did take us through parts of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the Jamaican Constitution, and you spoke about a number of individual freedoms, but my sense of it is that the representatives here of the Taino and Maroon peoples are not talking about individual rights, but collective rights, which they are articulating is encompassed in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Now, whilst these are not treaties and conventions in the way in which we understand that, the adoption or the participation of Jamaica in the articulation of these declarations may raise an expectation. And I wanted to ask the representative of the state, how do they see these declarations applying to Jamaica and the articulation of the rights of Taino and Indigenous and Maroon peoples in Jamaica, as we've heard from today. Thank you very much.
Gracias, comisionada. Le paso la palabra al comisionado Joel Hernández.
Gracias, Presidenta. Saludo con mucho afecto a Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle y al Yamaya Council of Indigenous Leaders. Les reconozco esta solicitud de audiencia que han hecho ante la Comisión. Es una audiencia de gran importancia para la Comisión y sin lugar a dudas para la Relatoría de los Pueblos Indígenas, como ya lo ha expresado mi colega, la comisionada Esmeralda Arosemena de Troitillo. Tiene sin lugar a dudas esta audiencia un trasfondo histórico muy importante. Gracias a ustedes, muchos de los que estamos aquí, yo mismo, hemos podido conocer un poquito de la historia de Jamaica. Y una historia que está muy asociada al colonialismo que prevaleció por tantos siglos en nuestra región y que ahora debe de reconocerse y realizarse las medidas que la comunidad internacional, a través de distintos instrumentos internacionales, ha venido reconociendo a los pueblos indígenas precisamente para que puedan ejercer sus derechos, sobre todo su derecho a la libre determinación como pueblo indígena que ustedes mismos así se consideran y que la historia así los ha marcado. Yo quiero tomar también esta audiencia quiero verla como un punto de partida muy importante. Ojalá esta sea una audiencia que inicie una conversación con el Estado. A mí me ha motivado mucho la intervención que ha formulado la distinguida representante del Estado de Jamaica, la señora Nicolette Williams, porque ha mostrado, y ya aquí se ha reconocido, una voluntad a un diálogo auténtico y constructivo. Y eso en sí mismo es el objetivo principal de estas audiencias, empezar un diálogo. Ciertamente es un camino largo, ha sido, pero al mismo tiempo un camino muy largo el que ustedes ya han recorrido, inclusive para llegar a esta oportunidad, pero bien vale la pena empezar ese diálogo con el Estado. Ya lo mencionaba la comisionada Clark, las expectativas que simplemente generan que Jamaica haya suscrito tanto la Declaración de Naciones Unidas de los Derechos de los Pueblos Indígenas como la Declaración Americana, sin entrar siquiera al análisis jurídico de estas declaraciones. Me parece que el mero hecho de ser suscriptora genera expectativas muy importantes para la comunidad en general de Jamaica y sobre todo para sus pueblos indígenas, sus pueblos indígenas y tribales. Yo quisiera poder contar con esta declaración que el Estado de Jamaica ha ofrecido realizar en respuesta a esta audiencia. Me parece que va a ser muy importante para poder entender entonces todo el problema en su conjunto. Yo ahí respetuosamente quisiera sugerir al Estado que nos explique cómo el Estado de Jamaica, como Estado independiente, es un Estado sucesor de la corona británica que suscribió los tratados en el siglo XVIII con los pueblos taíno y maroon de Jamaica, porque me parece que ese es un hecho histórico y jurídico muy importante que no puede ser desconocido. Todo ojalá que se encamine en una dirección que nos lleve al paso fundamental, que es la posibilidad de que ustedes puedan ejercer su derecho a la autodeterminación. Y a partir de ahí puedan surgir el reconocimiento de derechos colectivos. Nos queda claro que hay derechos individuales protegidos por la Constitución y las leyes de Jamaica, pero estamos aquí hablando de otra dimensión, la dimensión de los derechos colectivos que ustedes reclaman. Gracias, Presidenta.
Gracias, comisionado. Le paso la palabra al comisionado Carlos Bernal.
Many thanks, Madam Vice President. I just wanted to acknowledge the importance of this hearing and thank you for bringing us this matter to our attention. In the same line of Commissioner Hernandez, I would like to encourage the government of Jamaica to begin a serious process of meaningful engagement with the Maroon community for the sake of the acknowledgement of their rights. I am aware that Jamaica is not a party of the ILO Convention 169. That's a fact. However, within the realm of the Inter-American System of Human Rights, and also within the realm of the Commonwealth states, there has been a huge amount of progress in the recognition of all indigenous rights. For instance, it is not, we cannot underestimate the importance of the two cases, Mavo 1 and Mavo 2 in Australia, that acknowledge the rights of the indigenous people of the peoples of the Northern Territories. And right now, as many of you know, in Australia, there is a huge discussion on the proposal of the so-called The Voice, which is an initiative to entrench in the Constitution the rights of indigenous peoples in Australia. So in the Commonwealth, in the realm of the Commonwealth, there is the recognition to reinvigorate, as a matter of justice and fairness, the recognition of the indigenous rights and to enhance the protections of the rights at all levels. So I think this implies a unique opportunity for the current government of Jamaica to make justice to the Maroon community and to at least to engage in a minimum in a process of meaningful engagement with the community to address all the issues. Now, having said that, I just would like to ask one question: is whether the petitioners and also the state can give us a little bit more of information about domestic processes and initiatives of that meaningful engagement, whether there is any, I heard by the representative of the state that there is a case pending in court. Can we get more information about that? And also I would like to know whether there has been any process that has been initiated either within the realm or the framework of the Parliament, and also concerning the role of the public administration. I would like more information about that. Thank you so much.
Gracias, comisionado. No sé si la Secretaría tiene una participación. ¿Sí?
Gracias, primera vicepresidenta, y bienvenidas a esta audiencia. Queremos, en primer lugar, comentarles que hoy aquí se encuentran presentes estudiantes de la universidad que seguramente por primera vez están conversando y escuchando sobre los pueblos indígenas y tribales en Jamaica. Lo que ustedes han hecho el día de hoy es también hacer un recuento y mostrar a estas personas jóvenes que queremos que se involucren con el sistema lo que ocurre en algunos países de la región que pocas veces conocemos o volteamos a ver por diferentes razones. Yo quiero comentarles, quiero hacer una pregunta y quiero comentarles un tema. En diciembre de 2021, la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos publicó el texto Derecho a la Libre Determinación de los Pueblos Indígenas y Tribales. Y quisiéramos acercarles este texto que está en nuestra página web, tanto en inglés como en español, para usarlo como un verdadero instrumento de incidencia para ustedes, porque tiene experiencias comparadas de otros pueblos indígenas de la región en su lucha por la autodeterminación de sus culturas, de sus tierras y de sus formas de vida. Creo que será interesante. Al mismo tiempo, decirle a la representación del Estado que estaremos muy a la espera de la información que tendrán o que han ofrecido enviarnos por escrito, pero también ofrecerle a la representación del Estado un espacio para construir una agenda de cooperación técnica en esta materia, donde también puedan estar incorporados e incluidos quienes hoy aquí están en representación del pueblo taínos y cimarrones. Entendemos que la Constitución de Jamaica protege derechos y libertades y hay una prohibición formal de la discriminación, pero entiendo también que quienes hoy vienen aquí a esta sala no hablan de una prohibición jurídica, sino de la vivencia de la discriminación cotidiana. Y mi pregunta es si por favor ustedes podrían explicarnos un poco más los efectos de la criminalización y estigmatización debido a sus prácticas culturales por la defensa de los derechos de sus territorios, sus modos de vida y libre determinación. Si nos pueden contar algunas de esas experiencias para acortar la brecha entre lo que la representación del Estado dice sobre la prohibición de la discriminación formal y la vivencia de la discriminación cotidiana. Muchas gracias y gracias también por el ritual de inicio de la audiencia que nos ha gustado y nos ha emocionado mucho.
Gracias, secretaria. Le voy a pasar la palabra a la relatora especial de la Relatoría de Derechos Económicos, Sociales, Culturales y Ambientales.
Muchas gracias, vicepresidenta y presidenta de esta audiencia. También un honor estar en esta mesa con la comisión y escuchar sus testimonios. Yo tendría dos preguntas concretas. Dada la importancia de los pueblos indígenas en las Américas y en el mundo, en el combate contra el cambio climático, yo quisiera escuchar de su propia voz cuál es el rol que ustedes cumplen, qué es lo que están haciendo para ayudar a Jamaica a combatir el cambio climático a través de sus prácticas culturales y su sabiduría ancestral para proteger a la naturaleza. Y por otro lado, quisiera escuchar más, si es posible, o tener información sobre sus temores en cuanto a la propiedad intelectual y los derechos culturales, cómo ustedes están viendo afectados esos derechos, ponerles también en el radar el informe sobre empresas y derechos humanos, estándares interamericanos y la resolución sobre emergencia climática, porque creo que es un instrumento muy importante para pueblos indígenas. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Bueno, ahora le vamos a pasar la palabra a los peticionarios y escucharles. Sé que los tiempos son muy acotados, pero cualquier otra información que no logremos en el día de hoy tener sería muy útil ustedes enviarla y remitirla por escrito.
So we will respond to the questions of the commissioners. Could you remind me of how much time we have to respond, please?
Le voy a dar 10 minutos.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners. I'd like to start first with a statement of support on the question of recognition, and immediately after that, we will respond to the specific question about the impact of the non-recognition of Indigenous rights in Jamaica. So I hand over the floor for a statement of support.
Muchas gracias. Estamos aquí, como ya dijimos, de parte del Consejo Internacional de Primeras Naciones, un consejo que se formó en 2018 durante el Foro Permanente de los Asuntos Indígenas en las Naciones Unidas, con los pueblos originarios que llegaron de todas partes del mundo ahí para plantear sus ideas o sus quejas en veces, y más que nada buscando una alianza con los otros pueblos para reconocerlos. Una cosa importante es que reconocimos que, aparte de reconocimiento que en veces pedimos o que queremos que nos den, Lo importante fue que hubo reconocimiento entre los pueblos, como aquí ahorita se está haciendo. Y por eso, de los grupos que representamos nosotros, nuestros grupos que están en los 5 continentes, miembros, estamos, ya dijimos, 100% atrás de este esfuerzo tan importante del pueblo marún, el pueblo taíno, ahí en Jamaica, porque lo vemos como un modelo que se puede plantear, un modelo que se puede usar en muchas otras partes. Yo trabajo también bastante con los pueblos de México y los pueblos de acá de Estados Unidos y de Sudamérica y Centroamérica, y por todos lados todos tenemos la misma situación en esta ocasión. Estamos muy agradecidos que han tomado ya más formar la idea de los derechos de los pueblos originarios, las primeras naciones, como le llamamos nosotros, ¿sí? Y en uno de esos derechos estamos queriendo que también se reconozca más que los elementos culturales, porque sí tenemos reconocimientos culturales, hasta territoriales en veces, pero no jurídicos. En otras palabras, no podemos cambiar las cosas como están, por nosotros mismos solos. Y por eso vinimos aquí con ustedes, para estrechar las manos con ustedes y aquí con los hermanos y hermanas, para que sepan que estamos como fuéramos una sola persona. Y esa cuestión del medio ambiente es muy importante, porque solamente se puede componer este medio ambiente si los guardianes de la tierra, que son mundiales, pueden tomar su responsabilidad de nuevo. Y hasta ahorita, desfortunadamente, en más de 500 años acá, en este lado del mundo, ¿sí?, que nuestros pueblos han sufrido, pero una cosa importante, que nunca han desmayado, como ya dijo el jefe aquí, Calán, ¿sí?, están todavía de pie, pero más que nada en la mejor disposición para unir nuestros esfuerzos y ya quitar las cosas que nos interrumpen, las cosas que nos dividen, ¿sí? Y buscamos esa soberanía más que nada. Entonces, representando, para mí es muy importante este día también, le quiero compartir, que estamos hoy en el día que se llama 7 Cocodrilo, se llama Chicome Zipacli, de una temporada de 5 días, fíjese, de los últimos 5 días del calendario que llamamos calendario azteca. Y son días especiales, Nemon Temi se llaman. Y fíjese, son días para reflexión, ajuste y balance. Y tenemos el honor de estar aquí en este día con ustedes. Y más todavía, aquí nuestro representante jefe, su nombre tradicional también es el Caimán, fíjese. Así como es su día muy especial este día. Así que lo apoyamos 100%, pero más que nada queremos tener las manos con ustedes. Hay otra situación que yo pienso que es muy importante también, que viene siendo los elementos sagrados. Por ejemplo, mire, caminamos con cosas sagradas que nos han obsequiado o nos han dejado o legado, pero muchas veces tenemos problemas cruzando las fronteras, ¿sí? Y los quieren tratar como si fuera equipaje o algo así, ¿sí? Y necesitamos esa protección también, porque estamos, ya dije, la mejor disposición para buscar la manera de mejorar este mundo, para que estos jóvenes de aquí y otros jóvenes que nos están escuchando por allá sepan que todos tenemos ese derecho y esa responsabilidad. Así que otra vez digo, en este día, el principio, ¿verdad?, de los Nemon Temis, 5 días para reflexión, ajuste y balance, y se me hizo muy interesante que ustedes están teniendo su conferencia en ese momento. Así que el tiempo está a nuestro lado. Es nuestro mejor amigo, pero no nos puede esperar. Plazo Kamati. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and we will pass now to the Ambassador at Large for the Garifuna Nation.
Okay, as Ambassador at Large for the Garifuna Nation, and also my brother representing our president, we stand close with the Taino and Maroon people, and we have taken the initiative around the region of the Caribbean to establish what is United Maroons and Indigenous People. Garifuna Nation embraces Garifuna people all around the world. There are 1 million of us around the world. And the uniqueness of Garifuna from Belize is that we are a bridge between other indigenous people like the Maya. We have almost 1 million Maya people living here in the United States. So we offer the support, although it is a specific discussion for the people in Jamaica, we are one, we connect as one, and we give the support. We have had conversation with CARICOM this morning about sending information about this hearing around the region and around the world. And our intent is to take the conversation as indigenous-led, with no disrespect meant, but defining the protocols of what it means to be indigenous. Finally, that we will be honored, respected as peoples. We are not considered peoples, we are considered cultures. So when the Taino and the Maroons in Jamaica suffer, we suffer too, because they are our relatives. This is a healing journey for us.
Thank you very much. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I will invite Mama G to address the question on the non-recognition of Indigenous people in Jamaica and what it means in terms of obstacles.
Yeah, greetings again. The lack of recognition as Indigenous people has really taken a big impact on us. It stops us from moving forward in doing the work that we are commissioned to do. As stewardess of the land, we cannot able to carry out the work in dealing with the land climate change the way we are supposed to because of lack of recognition. Some of the areas that we should be working with, like the forestry department and these things, we are not a part of these things. We are not a part of the land commission or any one of these things, you know, because of lack of recognition. Because of lack of recognition, we recognize that there's a domestic case up to the time, but we could not stay just to deal with that domestic case if we are not recognized, as it was said in the review to the United Nations third report, as a people. There's nothing for us to exercise in our own country domestically if we are not recognized by them. So that's why we are here today, you know, to take it on this level, because we need recognition from our own people, where the history has born and live and where we are. If we are not recognized domestically there, then where can we go? You know, so the impact is very big. It also brings an impact between our own communities, where we have conflict and disputes because of the lack of recognition. There's dispute even amongst our own people in the different Maroon communities also.
Yeah, to touch on that briefly, I think it should be said on the record that the community that has the case with the government of Jamaica is not one of those being represented here now today. And one of the consequences of that court case is that we are there are certain levels of engagement that we would have had previously, which have been revoked, such as the cabinet order that was issued stating that any community that is stating that they are Maroon or Indigenous, that they have to check with the Attorney General for funding that they would have normally had access to. And the only reason that these things would be an issue to us now is because there's nothing in law that constitutes our rights. So they can put out these cabinet orders, and then it creates this fear amongst the government officials on should we continue to interact with these communities or not. I wanted to just state here clearly that, you know, obviously Yame Taino under the Yame Wani Council and our membership are Indigenous people of Jamaica, and our relatives the Nkunkung Pikibo, which are the Maroons. And today for us is Koni Kishibu Kati. It's a full moon of abundance. And we are determined to correct the colonial narrative of Taina extinction in Jamaica. We want the record to show that we acknowledge that the issues presented here today were inherited by an independent Jamaica, and so too the current administration. This hearing was never Waikoil and the Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle versus the state, but has always been Waikoil and the Maroon Indigenous Women's Circle seeking assistance to correct the human rights injustice our ancestors have been subjected to, and that subsequent administrations have ignored until today. So these are not issues that have just arisen, but because there has been nothing legally put in place to protect our communities, they continue. And we are willing and able to respond to the rest if the time is not allotted here in writing.
Muchísimas gracias. Voy inmediatamente a pasarle la palabra al Estado de Jamaica, si tienen el periodo para dar sus opiniones finales.
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Sí.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam First Vice President. We have listened carefully to the statements made by the petitioners, and we have taken careful note of the comments and questions posed by the commissioners. And just as we had indicated earlier, we will revert in writing in the appropriate manner. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Muy bien, entonces estamos finalizando la audiencia. Quisiera expresarles como palabras finales la importancia, ya se mencionó por parte de alguno de los compañeros, de tener, que ustedes tengan en la Comisión Interamericana este camino de la cooperación técnica, de buscar fórmulas en las que podemos trabajar juntos para ayudar en estos procesos. Y se hacía mención de nuestro informe temático sobre el derecho a la libre determinación. Y hago un énfasis en ello porque fue como resultado de un trabajo donde muchos directamente de los representantes de pueblos indígenas tuvieron la oportunidad de expresarnos sus ideas. Y también tuvimos oportunidad de escuchar algunos miembros de sus organizaciones. Y el informe hace ese reconocimiento de parte de la historia que hoy nos han compartido, que los tratados del siglo XVIII hicieron un reconocimiento de sus derechos, están allí plasmados. Creo que el comisionado Joel hacía una mención muy particular de que eso está vigente y son normas que pueden precisamente buscar su implementación. De allí el ofrecimiento de nuestra parte para una cooperación técnica, la relatoría de los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, que pudiéramos hacer algunas reuniones, algunas sesiones para profundizar en fórmulas y mecanismos de efectividad de los derechos. Y agradecer de una manera muy sincera, muy profunda, el trabajo que ustedes realizan. Ustedes están comprometidos con sus comunidades, con sus pueblos, y eso es un elemento que para la defensa de los derechos es necesario contar con ustedes. Así que muchísimas gracias. Gracias por compartir sus testimonios, sus ideas y seguir trabajando como lo han planteado, buscando esta comunicación con el Estado, que es fundamental para establecer el diálogo constructivo y productivo, para sacar entonces nuestros mejores resultados. Así que muchísimas gracias por participar, por estar aquí presentes. Gracias a la audiencia por estar en nuestro evento de esta tarde. Muchas gracias.
Recording.